God says, "Son, get ready, it will happen today." Have you ever felt like something was about to happen, but you couldn't explain why? As if heaven were whispering something just to you, as if God were at the door, knocking urgently? Well, know this. This feeling is not by chance. God has something to do in your life yet today. It's not next month. It's not when everything is perfect. It's now. There is an answer being released from heaven, a clear direction being breathed straight into your heart. But what can happen when we simply trust and place everything in His hands? What if what you have been asking for in prayer, through tears and sleepless nights, already coming your way? This message is not common. It comes as a warning, as a prophetic key. Because when God says prepare yourself, it is not for you to wait sitting down. It's to get up, align your faith and open your heart, because miracles move at the speed of obedience. Today, you will understand. What does it mean to truly trust God's promise? How to make room in your life for financial miracle? And how the divine provision may be arriving disguised as a challenge. If you believe this word is for you, subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications and share this video with someone who also needs an urgent answer from God. Even today, God will prove that His promise is greater than your fear. Write this sentence in the comments as a prophetic act. Let's declare together in the comments that even today, something powerful is going to happen. Total surrender to God. Have you ever tried to carry the world on your shoulders, thinking that you had to handle it all? Maybe until now you have lived as if everything depended exclusively on your effort, your intelligence, your willpower. But the truth is, there comes a time when the soul cries out for relief, and this relief only comes when we hand everything over to God. Surrendering completely to God is not a sign of weakness. It is the greatest act of trust anyone can demonstrate. It is saying, "Father, I don't know what to do, but I know that you do." When we stop struggling in our own strength and trust in God's guidance, something changes. Anxiety begins to fade, fear diminishes, peace invades. This true surrender happens when, in secret, you talk to God as if you were talking to a loving Father. It could be during a shower, during a quiet walk, or even in the middle of the night when no one sees your tears. It is in these moments that you put your worries on the table. Unemployment, the pain of loss, financial problems, a shaky marriage. And then you say, "Lord, I give you all of this. I trust in you." That's where the sky moves. Because the presence of God does not act in control, but rather in surrender, the spiritual transformation. It begins the moment you recognize that His way is better. And do you know what's most beautiful? He doesn't wait for you to be perfect to welcome you. He wants your sincere heart, even if it's tired, even if it's hurt. If you want to take a practical step, start today with a simple prayer. God, I place my life in your hands. Teach me to truly trust. Write it down on a piece of paper. Put it in a little box as a reminder. Everything is in God's hands, and every time you try to regain control, read it again. This delivery will be the first step towards everything that comes next. Promise of restoration and healing. Have you ever noticed how, on the outside, we can disguise it, but on the inside, there are areas of our hearts that seem to be in ruins? Wounds from the past, old rejections, hurts that have never been fully healed. Sometimes we move forward, but with cracks in our soul that prevent us from living fully. And that is precisely where God's promise comes into action. He promised to restore. He promised to heal. A restoration. God's work is not like a cosmetic makeover. It is not spiritual makeup. It is a profound transformation. He does not come to just fix what is broken, but to make everything new. What the enemy tried to destroy, God rebuilds with even more beauty. That disappointment that you thought would destroy you can become the starting point of spiritual transformation, most powerful of your life. But healing hurts, and that's where many give up. Because sometimes, to be healed, you have to face the pain. Open the chest of memories, release forgiveness, let God touch areas you'd rather ignore. But in this process, He never leaves you alone. presence of God walks with you, one step at a time. He wipes away every tear, restores every broken piece, whispers hope where there was only silence. Maybe your family is in tatters. Maybe your heart is hardened by so many broken promises. But listen, God specializes in restoring what the world has given up on fixing. A family restoration that you thought was impossible starts with an attitude, faith. Believe that He still heals, that He still works the impossible. Want to take the first step? Write a letter to God today telling Him what hurts you the most. Speak as if you were confiding in a faithful friend. You will be surprised at the relief it brings. The healing process has already begun, and the promise of restoration is underway. Spiritual transformation. Most people want to change their lives, but few are willing to change their spirit, and that's where the secret lies. There is no true change on the outside without a transformation on the inside. A spiritual transformation, it is the turning point. It is when you stop just knowing about God and begin to really know Him, up close, intimately. This transformation doesn't happen in the blink of an eye. It begins with a restlessness, a desire to go beyond the routine, to not be content with a shallow faith, with Sunday church and prayers before bed. It's that hunger to experience something deeper, more true. It's as if your spirit says, I was born for more than this. And do you know what is most beautiful? God honors this desire. When you give space, He comes in. He takes away what is no longer useful. Pride, ego, spiritual vanity, empty religiosity. And He plants new things, compassion, discernment, true peace. Presence of God begins to manifest itself in the little things. Even conversations change, thoughts change, choices begin to have another weight. A God's promise is clear: I will turn your heart of stone into a heart of flesh. This is not a pretty metaphor, it is a spiritual reality. When your soul is touched by God, you stop being reactive to circumstances and start being guided by heaven-grounded convictions. Your unshakable faith begins to consolidate, not because everything goes well, but because you understand that God is in control, even when everything seems to go wrong. Practically speaking, start feeding your spirit. Read Proverbs for 7 days. Then move on to the Gospels. Choose music that builds your faith. Ask God questions. Have honest conversations with Him. Transformation doesn't come from rules, it comes from relationship. And when that relationship grows, you'll never be the same again, because where there is fire of the Spirit, there is rebirth, financial freedom, and divine provision. Many people believe that talking about money and faith at the same time is wrong, but the truth is that God never intended for His children to live in debt, worry, and lack. On the contrary, the Bible is full of promises about provision, harvest, and abundance. And this is what we need to talk about with clarity and faith. A financial freedom, it doesn't start in the bank. It starts in the mind. It's when you understand that your source is not your salary, it's not the government, it's not the little way that comes along every now and then. Your source is the sky, and the sky never goes into crisis. Divine provision, it comes in unexpected ways, but it is constant for those who walk with obedience and honor. But make no mistake, this liberation requires a stance. God does not release resources to those who manage them carelessly. Perhaps you need to review your habits, cut out waste, stop comparing yourself, learn about biblical stewardship. All of this is part of the process. And yes, this is also spiritual, because money reveals where our heart is. I know real stories of people who were drowning in debt without hope, and who after a simple act of giving, faithfully paying their tithe, blessing someone with the little they had, praying, declaring their God's promise, saw doors open supernaturally, because God honors faith accompanied by action. Want to get started? Set aside a financial notebook with God. Write down everything that comes in and goes out. Pray before making financial decisions. Declare every day, my provision comes from heaven. No debt is greater than the God I serve. And each day trust The miracle can be in a call, a contract, an idea, a divine connection. You were not born to live limited. You were born to live with freedom, including financial freedom, unshakable faith and trust in divine purpose. The truth is that keeping the faith when everything is going well is easy. The real challenge begins when prayers seem unanswered, when God's silence echoes louder than the noise of the world, when the plans you have made simply fall apart. That's when the unshakable faith is forged, not in beautiful words, but in pain, in the desert, and in waiting. God never promised a road without obstacles, but He did promise to be with you every step of the way. God's promise does not change because circumstances have changed. It remains firm, even when everything around it says otherwise. When you understand this, you begin to walk with a serene, almost strange confidence. It is not a denial of reality, it is the certainty that there is a higher plan at work. And yes, there is one divine purpose for your life. It's not a cliché, it's destiny. Sometimes the struggle you face now is preparation for something bigger. The door that closed may have saved you from something you never imagined. The pain that weighs you down today may become your most powerful testimony tomorrow. God sees the whole picture. We only see pieces. Want a simple practice? Every day, write down one thing you trust God is working on, even if you can't see it. It could be in your marriage, your finances, your health, or even your faith. Say it out loud. It's in this daily exercise that unshakable faith gains muscle. And the more you trust what God says, the less you are shaken by what the world shows. No matter what is happening now, if God has made you a promise, He Himself will fulfill it. Maybe not in your time, maybe not in the way you expected, but it will always be better than you could have imagined. Financial miracle and answered prayer. Have you ever prayed for something so hard that it felt like your own heart was beating louder than your words? Have you ever cried saying, "Lord, only your miracle can get me out of this"? If so, know this: no sincere prayer is ignored. No tear falls in vain. When you pray with faith, heaven listens. And when heaven listens, the impossible begins to move. The financial miracle, it doesn't just happen to those who win the lottery or receive an unexpected inheritance. It also manifests itself when a debt is inexplicably cancelled, when a new opportunity appears out of nowhere, when what was scarce becomes sufficient. This is how God works, in the details, in the secret, in the surprising. But to experience this miracle, something more is needed than asking. It is necessary believe even when you don't see yet. And that, let's face it, is not easy. Many times we pray one day and doubt the next. However, answer to prayer comes at the right time. God does not work in a hurry, but with perfection. He responds when He knows that the miracle will not only be a blessing, but also a transformation. Maybe you are tired of waiting. Maybe you have even stopped praying for that cause. But today, this is the invitation. Go back to talking to God about what you have shelved. Pray again. Ask boldly. Not with fear of bothering, but with the certainty that you are talking to your Father. And a Father who loves, listens. And a Father who listens, responds. Try writing down your most urgent request on a piece of paper. Put it in an envelope and write on the outside, "Property of God." Keep it in a special place and pray for it every week. And when the miracle comes, because it will, come back and say, "Lord, you have heard, and I will never doubt again." Because heaven does not close for those who pray with faith. New beginning and victory over the past. Everyone has a past. Some parts we tell with pride. Others we prefer to hide even from ourselves. But what few understand is that God is not tied to what we were. He is the God of new beginnings, of starting from scratch, of blank pages. With Him, every day can be a new chapter. How many times have you felt like you couldn't move forward because of something that happened back then? A bad choice, a friendship that led you down the drain, a betrayal, a mistake that seems unforgivable. But let me tell you, God does not define you by your worst moment. He sees you for what you can become, not for what you have been. A spiritual transformation, it begins when you stop holding on to what has already happened. When you understand that the guilt does not come from God, but from the enemy, who tries to keep you paralyzed in yesterday. God wants to free you from this. And what's more, He wants to transform your story into a living testimony. What is pain today, tomorrow can be healing for someone. Yes, you can break toxic cycles. You can say no to what is holding you back. Presence of God. You can delete numbers from your cell phone, leave environments that drag you down, stop mentally reliving conversations that should already be buried. This is spiritual victory, silent but powerful. Want to take a practical approach? Write down on paper everything that still ties you to the past, then pray about each point and tear up the paper as a symbolic act. This does not erase the memory, but it does declare, this no longer controls me. God's promise is clear. Behold, I make all things new. So yes, there is life after the fall. There is laughter after the tears. And there is a glorious future awaiting you right after you decide to start over. Called to holiness and truth. In a world where everything seems relative, where values are negotiable and truths are shaped according to convenience, living in holiness and truth, it has almost become an act of rebellion. But this is exactly what God calls those who wish to walk close to Him, to leave the shallows behind, to let go of appearances, and to live a real faith, one that transforms, confronts, and liberates. Holiness is not living isolated from the world. It is living different in the middle of it. It is choosing integrity when no one is looking. It is turning off the screen when the content does not please God. It is being honest in business, even if it costs a smaller profit. Holiness is a posture of the heart. And believe me, God honors those who honor Him. We live in times when many prefer to listen to leaders who only say what pleases them. Sweet messages but without depth, beautiful words but empty of truth. The problem? This creates fragile Christians who fall at the slightest wind of adversity. Called to truth is urgent, and the truth sometimes hurts, but it heals. God is raising up a generation that does not negotiate principles. People who would rather lose friends than lose His presence, who choose faithfulness even when no one applauds, who live by God's promise, not by the approval of social networks. Want a practical exercise? Pray and ask God, in what area of my life have I been living in appearance and not the truth? It could be in friendships, relationships, or intentions. Write down the answer and decide to change. Because when you align with the truth, heaven aligns with you. A spiritual transformation true happens when we choose the narrow path, not because it is easy, but because it is the only one that leads to a full life. Mission to help others. There is a secret in the kingdom of God that many people forget. Those who live only for themselves become poorer inside. True spiritual wealth lies in being a channel, not a reservoir. God's promise for your life includes being an answer to other people. And when you commit to this mission, something powerful happens. You are also blessed as you bless. A mission to help others. It does not require a theology degree or perfection. It requires sensitivity. Sometimes helping is just listening to someone who no one else is listening to. It is sending a message of encouragement, offering a plate of food, praying sincerely for someone who is discouraged. Heaven moves when you leave your world and enter the world of another with compassion. Want to live spiritual transformation real? Start by asking yourself, who needs me today? It could be someone in your home. It could be a stranger who crosses your path. When you make helping a practice, presence of God manifests itself through your gestures. And do you know what's even stronger? Many times you heal yourself while helping someone get up. Don't underestimate small gestures. A hug can save a life. A word can rekindle a flame that's almost gone out. You may not be famous, but you are influential in the kingdom. God has placed you in strategic places, not by chance, but by purpose. Try this. Pick one person today. Pray for them. Call them. Ask how they are doing. Be intentional. You'll be amazed at how heaven responds when you decide to step out of your comfort zone and become an instrument. The real one divine provision. It's not just what we receive, it's what we have to give. Because when God finds an available heart, He fills it to overflowing. Life with purpose and heavenly destiny. You are not the product of chance. You are not born by mistake. You are not breathing just to pay bills and solve problems. There is a divine purpose woven into every detail of your life, even when you don't understand it, even when everything seems out of place. And that purpose doesn't end there. It points to something eternal, your heavenly destiny. The big trap is living on autopilot. Waking up, working, having fun, sleeping, repeat. Days go by, years fly by, and before you know it, you're living a meaningless life, just existing. But when you connect with the sky, you realize that nothing is too small when done with the right heart. A conversation, a choice, something left unsaid at the right time. All of these shape your path. God created you with a calling. Maybe you don't know exactly what it is yet, but believe me, He knows, and He will reveal it little by little as you walk with Him. Don't wait until you understand everything before you move. Start with what's in front of you. The spiritual transformation, it also happens when you accept that you are on a mission, even in the simplest tasks. Your purpose is not limited to your work, but can be found within it. It is not only in the pulpit, but also in the balcony, in the classroom, on the street. Every place is a field of action. Every person around you is an opportunity to manifest heaven on earth. And about the heavenly destiny, it is real. One day, all of this will pass. And what will remain is what you did with what God gave you. Living with purpose means living with your eyes on high, but your feet firmly in the present. It means understanding that every decision here echoes in eternity. Want to practice this? Every morning declare, Lord, guide my steps today to live out your purpose. And pay attention. Sometimes the direction comes in a whisper, other times it comes in a closing door, but heaven never misses its path. Perseverance in afflictions. Have you ever felt like you were on the edge? Like you were fighting, praying, trying, but nothing seemed to change? Well, everyone goes through a valley at some point, but what separates those who move forward from those who give up is the ability to persevere even without seeing a way out. And it is exactly there that faith matures and heaven approaches. The unshakable faith, it is not the kind of faith that only declares victory when everything goes right. It is the faith that refuses to give in, even when your body is tired and your heart is broken. It is when you say, with tears in your eyes, I still trust in you, Lord. At these times, you may not feel the same way, presence of God, but that is where He is closest, because God never abandons those who choose to remain. A God's promise. It is not the absence of struggle, it is companionship in the midst of war. He has promised that all things work together for good to those who love Him. Even what seems like a delay can be protection. Even loss can be a sign of deliverance. When you refuse to stop, even without understanding, you are saying to heaven, I keep believing. But don't expect yourself to be strong all the time. Perseverance also means admitting weakness, asking for help, and crying when necessary. God doesn't expect you to make it on your own. He wants you to walk with Him. Perseverance isn't toughness, it's dependence. And when you learn to depend, you discover strengths you didn't know you had. A simple exercise. Write a list of the afflictions you have overcome. See how many times you thought you couldn't do it, and you did. This list is proof that if God has sustained you this far, it won't be now that He will abandon you. You may be going through the fire, but you will come out of it forged, stronger, wiser, and more full of faith, joy, peace, and the presence of God. There is a peace that money can't buy, a joy that doesn't depend on good news, a lightness that doesn't come from vacations or sunny days. It's something deeper, more constant, more true. That's what happens when you discover that presence of God is your greatest treasure, and that where He is, nothing else needs to make sense. Maybe you're waiting for life to settle down so you can finally feel at peace. Maybe you think you'll only be happy when that dream comes true, when that person changes, when the bills are paid. But what if I told you that the real happiness does it start not when everything changes, but when you change inside? God's promise is clear. My peace I give to you, not as the world gives. This means that even in chaos, it is possible to have a serene heart. Even in difficult times, it is possible to smile. Not a forced smile, but a smile of someone who trusts, of someone who knows that despite everything, God is present. And when He is present, the soul breathes. Want to cultivate this? Create small rituals of presence. Wake up and give thanks before picking up your cell phone. Play soft music while you tidy up the house. Walk in silence, paying attention to creation. Read a psalm out loud and notice how it changes the environment. It is in these simple moments that the spiritual transformation happens. Do not underestimate the power of living lightly, of not carrying burdens that are not yours, of choosing peace even when everything calls you to despair. Unshakable faith often manifests itself like this, in a heart that trusts and rests. Because in the end, what we need most is Him. And when He is present, everything calms down. Call to prayer and devotional life. Do you know that moment of the day when everything seems to stop? The world still turns, commitments still exist, but you feel like you need to disconnect from everything to connect with what is essential? This is the call, a daily invitation from God to a secret, intimate, and sacred place, prayer and devotional life. Prayer is not a cold ritual, nor a memorized speech. It is a conversation, a direct bridge between heaven and your heart. It does not need to be long, nor full of beautiful words. It needs to be sincere. Prayer is where your tears are understood without subtitles, where your silences have meaning, and where presence of God answers even what you don't know how to ask. And to devotional life, it is the food of the soul. It is reading the Word with a hunger for direction. It is writing down verses that speak directly to the heart. It is setting aside minutes of the day to say, "Speak to me, Father. I am listening." When this habit becomes part of your routine, everything changes. Spiritual transformation, it does not happen in grand events, but in the quiet moments of daily devotion. You don't have to start with an hour on your knees. Start with 5 minutes. Read a psalm. Say what you feel. Listen to a song that brings you closer to heaven. Keep a prayer notebook. Write down requests, thanks, and answers. Over time, you will notice your faith will become stronger, your mind lighter, your heart more sensitive. The divine purpose reveals itself in the midst of constancy. And the more you seek God, the more He reveals Himself. Not because He hides, but because intimacy demands intention. Prayer is not a last resort. It is the first step, and those who pray are never alone. Do you want to hear God speak? Then open your heart and the ears of your soul. Eternal promises and guaranteed victory. Have you ever stopped to think that God's promises have no expiration date? That He doesn't change His mind depending on circumstances or your performance? Unlike everything that is temporary in this world, God's promises, eternal promises of God, are firm, sure, and unchanging. And when He says victory is yours, is guaranteed, it's not if, it's when. The problem is that we live in a time of instantaneous responses. If something doesn't happen right away, we think it has been forgotten. But God doesn't work in a hurry. He works with purpose. While you wait, He molds. While you pray, He prepares. And when the time comes, nothing and no one can stop it. A guaranteed victory, what God promises, does not mean no battles. It means that in the end, you win. There may be falls along the way, tears, difficult nights, but these are all part of the process that forges the unshakable faith. Your story is still being written, and the ending has already been decided. It is one of overcoming, of conquest, of glory. Many heroes of faith have spent years waiting. Abraham waited for a son. Joseph waited to be released from prison. David waited for the throne, but they all found their way, not by luck, but by promise. And the same God who fulfilled his promise in their lives will fulfill yours. Want to strengthen your confidence in this? Write down all the biblical promises that speak to your heart. Read one each day and declare out loud, "I believe this." Keep them as reminders that heaven does not lie. God is not a man that he should fail. You may be in a time of planting, but the harvest is coming, and when it comes, you will understand that it was worth waiting, trusting, and continuing. Because when God promises, nothing can prevent compliance. Spiritual riches versus outward appearance. We live in an era where what shines on the outside is applauded, followed, envied. Social networks have become showcases of seemingly perfect lives, retouched photos, motivational phrases, well-rehearsed smiles. But behind all this, how many people are empty? The real spiritual wealth, it is not measured in likes or status, but in the peace that no one sees, in the character that no one photographs, in the faith that is sustained in silence. Jesus was blunt. What good is it to gain the whole world and forfeit your soul? This question still resonates today, more relevant than ever, because presence of God, he is not impressed by appearance. He probes hearts. He values humility, purity of intentions, and sincerity in the walk. And it is in these invisible places that he pours out his greatest blessings. A God's promise, it is clear. The meek will inherit the earth. The pure in heart will see God. This is not linked to how much you have, but to how much of him you carry within you. Being spiritually rich is sleeping in peace, even without knowing what tomorrow will bring. It is smiling with gratitude for simple things. It is helping someone without expecting applause. It is being certain that your value does not depend on your appearance, but on your essence. Want to cultivate this? Disconnect from the outside world for a while. Fast from vanity, it could be from social media, impulse buying, or comparisons. Use this time to pray, to read Proverbs, to reflect on what really has value, and ask yourself, what have I sought more, the approval of men or intimacy with God? Because in the end, what will weigh in eternity is not what human eyes saw, but what heaven recognized as true. After all this, the question remains, what are you going to do with this message? Are you just going to listen and follow along as if nothing was said? Or are you going to allow these words to find a home in your heart and create real transformation? God did not bring you here by chance. If you have reached the end of this message, it is because heaven has a commitment to your story. But now, it's your turn to act. What needs to be delivered? What promise do you need to believe again? What practical action will you take today to align yourself with the divine purpose? What awaits you? Remember, miracles happen on the journey, not in stagnation. Unshakable, faith is built step by step between good days and difficult days, and everything that God promised, he will fulfill. But the question is, are you prepared to receive? So before I leave, I want to challenge you. Write here in the comments which part of this message touched your heart the most. Share this video with someone you love who needs a fresh start. It is clear, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and follow the next messages that heaven has for you. Because the journey doesn't end here, she's just getting started.